Welcome to Team Building Cultures, the podcast designed to deliver tools and tips for improving team communication, collaboration, and fostering a culture where teams thrive. Now, here's your host, Beverly Hathorn, owner of Strategic HR Consultants.
Hello, podcast listeners, all my team building people out there. Thank you so much for joining me for yet another episode of Team Building Cultures. I am your host, Beverly Hathorn, owner of Strategic HR Consultants. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Mr. Ben Baker. Ben is the owner and, in his words, chief bottle washer of Your Brand Marketing. Ben has been enabling his clients to communicate their brand message and values and their goals for over 30 years now.
Mhm.
He is a two-time author. Wonderful. I'm struggling with my first book, Ben. He's a two-time author and 11-year podcaster. So I'm really excited to talk to him because I'm a first-year podcaster and the heart and soul behind Your Brand Marketing. Ben is going to talk to us today about communicating our way to profitability. So we're going to learn some things from Ben today. So Ben, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you.
Beverly, thanks for having me. It's funny when people, do my bio, all of a sudden I start feeling old. Like, how long have I been doing all of this stuff? It feels like yesterday.
I do understand because sometimes when I talk about my skills, I'm like, and my experience, I'm like, wow, you're really dating yourself. But, I'm happy to have been around, to have done so many things, because I was around before, computers when we used to have to put a piece of paper in a typewriter and change ribbons and all that kind of stuff.
I tell people I'm World Wide Web and pre-social media. So,
Yeah.
I carried a pager on my hip for years. So
Yeah.
it tells people how long I've been at this.
Oh my God. And back in the days when if somebody called you at home and you weren't home, you just missed the call, you
That's
know?
right. And life was probably better.
It was a lot simpler for sure. So, yeah, so let's get going, Ben. So, tell us a little bit about your brand marketing and what you
Sure.
do over there.
Yeah, Your Brand Marketing is in its 16th year. I've been in the communications game for about 30 years now. What we focus on primarily is internal communication and change management for large enterprise level companies. So what we do is we help companies communicate more effectively, break down silos, drive change, and build understanding.
Okay, gotcha. Well, internal communication, that's a pretty broad subject, but change management, I'm definitely interested, and I'm sure my listeners and viewers will be as well. I'm definitely interested in learning a little more about that and how you go about accomplishing that. I know that there's Carter's method, and there's several methods to change management, but we all know that change is difficult for some people, and some people resist change. And there's stages to implementing that change. You got to get the buy-in and then, you got to get them to go for it. So what are some of the things that you can tell us about getting started with a change management plan?
Well, the first thing you need to understand is most people are afraid of change. Whether it's the person on the front line or whether it's the CEO, everybody is afraid of change because it's risk. It's the unknown. It's the boogeyman. It's the darkness beyond the light. It's something that you just don't understand because a lot of people never take the time of understanding what are our goals? Where are we going? Why do we want to be there? And what does it enable us to do once we get there that we can't do today? And on the flip side, people don't understand is what are the ramifications of not changing? We need to understand what do we get if we change that we don't get today, and what are the travesties that can happen within a corporation if we don't enact change. And this can't just happen in a small room around a boardroom table and everybody in the room gets it and think everybody else is going to follow lockstep. Everybody within the organization, all stakeholders, vendors, clients, even prospects need to have a clear understanding of where you're going and why. Why are you changing? Because if you're changing, it makes it uncomfortable for them. And if they're uncomfortable, they're not willing to grab your hand and jump off the cliff.
Yeah. And I would say also that to communicate that change, there has to be a certain relationship already established. So how do we communicate change going like downstream? So we know, how executive leadership, we know how they discuss that. It's usually in terms of profit and stocks and, things like that. But to the people that are to the real worker bees, how do we communicate that change? Does that come in terms of the town halls? Or, how do we get that change to them and explain what that means to them?
Different people in different ways. The first thing we need to realize is by the time we've decided we're going to change within an organization, by the time we go from the small group to the larger group, everybody around that boardroom table is bought in. They've had 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half to mull this over, to see the upsides, the downsides, to look at the risk management, to get comfortable with it. What they have to realize is that everybody else outside the room, as soon as you announce this is the first time they've heard of it. So you may be on step 32 and ready to jump into step 33, but everybody else is on step 1, 2, and 3. And if we start enacting change in our communication as if everybody is up to speed and everybody is, magically understood and understands what we do, we're going to fail right off the bat. So beyond whether it's a town hall, whether it's, one-on-one conversations, whether it's a memo or a, whatever, it's getting people to understand that we've got to go back to the beginning. And we have to sit there and explain this as a story of where were we, where are we today, where are we going, and why. And that's really important. It's grabbing people by the hand and saying, you know what? Come with me. This is why, this is what we're going to do when we get there, and everything's going to be okay. Now, different people learn differently. For large to enterprise level corporations, we use an internal private podcast. So this is a behind closed doors, stream only podcast platform that only allows those who have permission to listen to it. And it enables you, especially if you're a national, international organization, even a global organization, to be able to speak asynchronously from a single person voice or a multiple person voice and explain the different processes that are going along. Because it's not just hearing from the CEO, it's hearing from the CFO, it's hearing from the operations department, the engineers, the sales department, the marketing department, the customer experience department, and allowing all these different voices to come to the forefront and sit there and say, listen, this is where we see the advantages. This is something that we see that could be a trepidation. Okay, let's talk about it, so everybody can hear it. And then what we do is we draw those into smaller conversations, either on a Slack channel or Teams conversation or within team meetings or whatever. And the podcast becomes an impetus to start the conversations amongst various groups. And it allows for the breakdown of silos. So you can sit there and say, oh, wait a second here. Okay, it's not just my team that's being affected by this. Somebody in Malaysia or somebody in Germany or somebody in South Africa need to be able to take whatever we do, have a handoff, and to enable them to be successful. What do I need to do to hand this thing off to make it more successful for them? Now, in smaller organizations, it's got to be ongoing communication. Yes, there is the initial, hey, this is what we're doing. And the more it can be a two-way conversation, the better it is. It can't just be an announcement. It can't be just say, we're going to the moon. It's got to be, we're going to the moon. This is why we're going to the moon. This is what we're going to benefit by going to the moon. This is how it's going to change our organization for the better. These are some things that we've thought of that could be, challenging, but this is how we think we're going to overcome it. But there's got to be ways for people to listen to it, understand it, internalize it, value it, and be able to recall and retell it in their own way. And whether, different organizations are going to do this differently. Whether you're a group of 5 people, you can bring everybody into a huddle. If you're a group of 1,000 people, you have to take a look at how are we going to do this effectively so people are hearing this from first voice and it's not just a rumor mill being spread around the organization, but there's got to be the ability for different departments to talk to one another, bounce off of each other, and be able to elevate the conversation and say, listen, this is where we see the advantages. This is where we see the trepidations. How can we work together to be able to meet the objectives? Because everybody understands in the end, we're going up this mountain. That's where we're going. We may slip, we may falter, we may run into a wall, we may see a fallen tree, but we know we need to get on top of that mountain. But if we know we're going that way, we can help each other overcome the pitfalls and be able to get to the top of the mountain together.
It's awesome that you say things like we and our, and, this is what we're doing. And you made one statement where you said, grab them by the hand and come go with me. That's the epitome of great leadership. Great leaders say, we are going, we're doing this together, not stand somewhere and tell the team where to go and what to do. Great leaders, it's us. We're doing this together. So, I wanted to kind of back up and make that point. But you also said something about how we need to kind of control the leaks. And sometime when that information leaks out that there's going to be some changes, then people start to speculate, and the anxiety and the anticipation and the fear starts to mount. And then they start to get angry because they feel like you're doing something behind their backs, that you're not being honest with them about it, that you're not being transparent about. So by the time that you call them together to talk about it, they're already, arms folded, brick wall up against it. And, so what are some of the things that we can do to control those leaks? Because that can be really dangerous.
The comment that I make very early on in any conversation I have with a CEO is, your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. So your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. Most people want to sideline or ignore the dissenters. Everybody knows who they are in their organization. Everybody knows who's got the slide comments, who's going to, fold their arms, who's going to dig in their heels within a particular point. We know who those people are within our organization. Here's the trick. Most of those people are folding up their arms because they don't feel listened to, understood, and valued. Most of those people are folding their arms because they've tried to make the organization better and they've been sidelined. And when we can take those people and we can make them part of the process and say, look, I want to hear why you think this is a bad thing. I don't want you to just say that's wrong. I want you to say this is wrong and this is why, and this is how we might be able to do it better. And if you can harness the power of those people and bring them into the conversation, they're the ones who are going to turn around and say, well, wait a second here. If Dave, Debbie, or Cindy are on board, probably this isn't such a bad idea, because they're the first ones to go negative on this. And if they're not negative, maybe they've actually taken the time and they've done the effort and the due diligence to figure this thing out properly. I mean, whether this is a DEI thing, whether this is a change management issue, whether it's a personnel issue, whatever, a lot of times it's not the person that is the negative person that's the challenge. It's probably the person who's leading them ineffectively, who are not leading, who are not listening, that are not empowering, and that are not seeing this person as a valuable asset to the organization. Now, sometimes you do have people that are just negative. Sometimes you just have people, they're either in the wrong job or they're in the wrong company, and they are just totally disruptive. And no matter what you do, you're never going to make them happy. You know what? That's a cancer and you got to get rid of it. But the majority of those people, before you just toss them under the bus and send them on their way. You need to sit there and say, wait a second here. Is this something you want to do? I just heard something brilliant from Amazon. Amazon pays people, depending on your length of service, between $1,000 and $5,000 to leave. And it says, we don't want you to take this advantage of this. However, if you're not happy where you are, if you don't feel that you're getting the training that you need, if you don't feel you're getting the advancement, if you don't feel that you're worthwhile, this is the right place for you, here's some money and here's some things that we can do to help you transition out of Amazon and help you, be successful somewhere else. Because as I said, your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. And what do we need those people in our organization for? If they truly and absolutely are miserable where they are, they're a cancer that's going to spread. And we need to do whatever we can as organizations, either to lead these people to become better employees and make sure that they become contributing members, or we need to lead them out the door, depending on what needs to happen.
So powerful. Those are some very, very strong words. And I'm in complete alignment with what you're saying. That's one of the reasons that I have this podcast, because the organizational culture, I like to say, is the soil in which all things grow. And if your culture is not one of autonomy, empowerment, psychological safety, flexibility, all the things that employees need to grow and be happy and engaged. And if they're not getting that and they become unhappy and they leave, now that's one thing. But if they become unhappy and they stay, oh my God, you really got something on your hands then. And especially if nothing is done, either within the culture or within the relationship or within that one-on-one relationship between leader and employee, if nothing's done to fix that. Because that employee, like you said, is going to spread their negativity and their unhappiness to other employees. And every change that comes along, they're going to kick it and not be happy about it, and they're going to have reasons why they're not happy about it, and they're going to share that with other employees, and it's just going to become a cancer that will spread. Those are very, very strong words, yet extremely accurate. So I am in definite alignment with you on that, Ben.
Well, let me add to that just before we go into the next thing. Is that there's too many organizations that survey their employees to death. They survey, they create all these surveys and then do nothing about it. They do absolutely nothing about it. Even if you do a survey and everybody is asking for X and you can't do X, you don't have the financial ability to do it, you don't have the expertise to do it, you don't have whatever to do it. It is in your best interest to say, we can't do this now because of this. We're working on this. This is where we can go in the future. We can't do this, but we can do this. And this is how we want to support you moving forward. But we heard you and we understand we just need to move towards that. We just can't go from A to Q in one leap. We need to be able to give people the understanding that if we're going to survey them, if we're going to spot poll them, whatever we're going to do, that actually we take action on this. And we got to be prepared. If they tell us that our business, especially sucks, we as leadership need to sit there and say, okay, wait a second here. If 75% of the people are saying this, maybe it's not them, maybe it is us. And maybe we need to do something about this. And you need to do something about this that is going to actually move the needle and not just placate people and not just, do ticks and bobs thinking you're going to make everybody's life better. You actually have to make substantial change and substantial communication around that change if you're going to ask people questions. Never ask people a question that you're not willing to act on.
Yes. Don't ask me a question you don't want the answer to.
Absolutely.
And once again, build those relationships. Don't wait to get a survey to find out that 75% of your employees are unhappy. That's something you should know as especially your first level, and you should know why. If you're building those relationships, you should understand that there's not enough training. There's not enough promotions. People aren't seeing opportunities. They don't like their pay. They don't like their work. They're not challenged in their work. You should know these things.
Mhm.
And this is not something you should hear at the proverbial once a year performance review, or, this is something, if you're building those relationships, these are things you should know. And you shouldn't wait to get an employee survey to get that information. And as you said, don't ask me questions you don't want the answers to. When you ask those questions, be prepared to deliver, on what you on the results that you get. So yeah, definitely. Wonderful information, Ben. Thank you so much for that. So let's talk about some of the other things that you wanted to share with us, like
Sure.
how to listen to understand. Let's talk about that.
Listening to understand is about caring about the person you're talking to. It's really that simple. Most of us, and I hate to say it, in the world of social media, in the world of asynchronous communication, care about ourselves. We are selfish human beings. And that's, it doesn't matter if it's the person turning the wrench or if it's the person running the company. And we all, first and foremost, want to satisfy our own hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is there for a reason. We as leaders and we as people need to understand that in order for larger success to happen, it can't be just about us. We can't be ignored. We can't be negated, but we're not going to get everything we want. And conversations happen in order to understand different people's point of views and different people's needs. You may not like it. It may be contradictory to what you want. It may be, it may not be something that you want to hear, but until you understand what other people need in order to be successful, you can't figure out a way to be successful together. Like, I remember sitting around a board table and saying, okay, what is our main goal for 2024? And we had 8 people around the table, and 6 of them had different goals. And 3 of them were completely contradictory to the other. And they would have set the different departments up to be adversarial at best. And you need to sit there and say, wait a second, don't you see this as a problem? I mean, you look at marketing and sales as the perfect example. Marketing and sales are compensated differently. And because they are compensated differently, they have different KPIs, they have different, different focuses. They're adversarial in a lot of cases. Sales doesn't understand marketing, marketing doesn't understand sales. Sales says that marketing doesn't give what they want. Marketing says that sales, doesn't give them what they need, but they don't talk to each other. And if they talk to each other and said, wait a second here, it's not us versus you, it's the two of us trying to communicate effectively with the customer. It's the two of us trying to make the customer's life better, to elevate the conversation and to differentiate our brand in order to be able to make us the vendor of choice. Therefore, both of our compensations are going to go up. And very few organizations are doing that because everybody's competing over budgets. Everybody's competing over, who's going to be the, which department is the next CEO going to be coming from? All sorts of different things. So we need to sit there and say, guys, the department budgets and all those things need to be put in this position that says, how do we take this pot of money and be able to have it work more effectively so it doesn't create silos, but instead enables the organization as a whole to succeed and all the departments to rise together.
Exactly. And we cannot work in a silo in an organization. We cannot work in a silo, and even when we're working to improve or change processes or systems, we've got to consider, what's it going to do to the upstream folks? What's it going to do to the downstream folks? So you definitely can't work in those silos. And it's interesting how sometimes when you get different groups of people or different parts of the organization together and try to determine the goals, especially during the budget time. It's interesting how everybody can be adversarial, to use your word. So, I find that interesting. So, we've got to understand that everybody has their own perspective, and we have to listen to learn those perspectives and then try to come together as one so that we all can benefit, because there is a space where we all can benefit. We don't have to take from one in order for the other to get what they need. So yeah.
Well, let's take this from an HR point of view. Okay, from HR point of view, HR tends to not get their seat at the table. Even if with a CHRO, a lot of organizations, HR is seen as, oh God, it's the cost center. HR wants more money. And when HR does that, the main reason that they get that backlash is because HR doesn't understand business processes. HR doesn't understand business. They don't understand KPIs. They don't understand OKRs. They don't understand budgets. They don't understand timelines. They don't understand the greater macro of what's happening within the company. They understand what HR needs and what HR is focused on. And it's important. But the question is, if you as an HR professional can sit down with a CFO and understand overall budgets, overall objectives, etc., and be able to sit there and say, look, by doing this, the HR is going to save the company X amount of money. It's we can but by reducing churn by 30% at $100,000 an employee, we're going to be able to free up X amount of dollars within the budget that can be used for the training that we need. We can do this, and this, and therefore we're actually not asking for more money. What we're doing is allocating budget, because if we have this program, it's going to allow us to do this, and this. But until we can position that in the language of the CEO, in the language of the CFO, and show them how you've gone from being a cost center to being a profit center, you all of a sudden are on the outside looking in. And we need as all parts of things to look at how other people perceive us, to be able to sit there and say, how can I position my particular needs so that they dovetail with the needs of the organization?
Yes, and it's wonderful that you used HR as an example. So, I'm really happy. That gave me a great segue. That's one of the reasons I named my business a strategic HR consultants, because I work to be a strategic business partner, not just another arm, to the company. And one of the things that I do, like you mentioned, I can show you where your employee churn is costing you money, but I can also back up and show you why that's happening. You're hiring too quickly. You're putting the wrong people in the wrong jobs. Your job descriptions are not perfectly informational about what actually goes on in the job. Your onboarding process is not working. People are not aware of what they're facing when they come to work for you. So, and even down to your employee engagement, with every employee that you have that's not engaged, that's costing you X amount of dollars for them to not produce. So, that's one of the things that I do, is to help my clients in that manner. I work to become a strategic business partner, not just your fractional HR person to help you find candidates, attract candidates for the job. I want to put the right people in the right job so that they stay. I don't want my clients to invest time and money in attracting, hiring, and training the wrong person who's just going to leave in a couple of months. And then now you've got all that downtime to try to train somebody else and get somebody else. That's money. That's an extensive amount of money that you're spending over and over. So you're doing something wrong here if your people keep leaving. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what the problem is. So yeah, thank you for opening that door, Ben.
You're welcome. But let me just make one point, because this is something I see HR doing wrong all the time, is using the word partner. You're not a partner. You're part of the business unit. Partners are vendors. You talk to any salesperson out there, anybody trying to sell your company, they're calling themselves your business partner. Therefore, those business partners can either be ignored, they can be seen as valuable, they can be allocated funds, they can have funds taken away. They are not an integral part of the business because they're not an internal resource. They're not an integral unit of the organization. If you see yourself as a partner, what you're doing is you're separating yourself from the rest of the company. And by doing that, you are a cost center. And therefore, I implore every HR organization out there to get rid of the term HR business partner, because what you're doing mentally, whether you admit it or not, is separating yourself from the rest of the organization. Because no other department in the company calls itself a partner.
So I can agree to a portion of that, but that's one of the reasons why HR needs to show value up front. That's why HR has to come in the door with, this is what we've reviewed and this is what we found and this is how we can help. Because when it comes to the actual work that gets done, HR owns all of it. When it comes to the actual work that's happening, HR owns every bit of it. HR owns the training, HR owns the people that come in, HR owns the monies that are allocated for those people to come in terms of salary and compensation and benefits. So when it comes to that portion, HR does own the whole kit and caboodle. So
Do they really? Or is that money reallocated from different departments to say, I've got 30 employees that need to be hired. That money's got to come out of my budget. The money that's being used for training is coming out of my budget. And I'm giving that money to HR to be able to utilize.
Well,
being a partner separates you from, when nobody else in the organization is calling themselves a partner, what you're doing is you're separating yourself from the organization and you're putting yourself in a position where you are separate from everybody else in the organization. You are an integral business unit like every other unit within the organization. Your job is to be able to enable the organization to be successful and to be able to drive initiatives and be able to drive change. Now, that change comes from training, that change comes from hiring processes, that comes from policy and procedure, and be able to do that. But what you are is, you're not a partner, you are an integral business unit within the organization, enabling the organization to drive and thrive.
Okay, I'll accept that, Ben. I will definitely accept that.
Words matter.
Words definitely matter. Words definitely matter. So, we will go with that. I'm not sure all my HR people out there will agree 100%, because we do partner with we're the only organization that partners with every part of the company. So, but I kind of like your rephrasing or your repositioning of HR and the term. And so I'll go with that. I'm just not sure everybody else will.
Here you go. And I'll argue with Sherm to the nth degree about this.
You might have some Sherms contact you.
Listen, Sherms can contact me any day. It's ben@yourbrandmarketing.com. I'm happy to have this argument all day, every day. It doesn't matter how you perceive yourself. It matters how the organization perceives you.
Yes, and I would not call it an argument. I would call it a discussion, because we just got done saying that, we need to listen to understand, and we have to understand other people's perspectives. So I would definitely call it a discussion, not an
Absolutely.
argument. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about communication. You want us to also understand that communication is not a one and done. Tell us, can you expound on that concept?
Think about a billboard that you drive by on the side of the highway. The first time you drive by it, or the 7th time you drive by it, you might not even recognize it. You may not have read the words. You might have looked at the image. You might have driven past it and not even realized it was there. Communication is the same way. Most people, when they hear something the first time, or it's presented to them the first time, it means nothing to them. And it's not the fact that you're being unclear, it's the fact that they've got 1,000 other things that they're concentrating on at the same time that for them are higher priority. And we need to understand this, that different people will respond to different mediums in different ways. Some people like video, some people like audio, some people like written word. I know engineers, you got to write them a 3-page memo before they're even going to even look at it. You know, they need the detail. My CEO needs it in, in 200 words or less. You know, it's the same concept, but different people are going to respond to it differently, because some people want all the hay in the barn. Some people just want to know the 50,000 foot view. And how does it affect them, or does it affect them? And some people just sit there and say, you know what, when it's a problem, I'll look at it. And they'll come back to you and say, what did you say again? Well, I told you 4 times. I know, but I had other things going on. And we need to realize that just because something is a priority to us doesn't mean it's a priority to everybody else. And we need to think about it that way and look at different ways. You know, I've sat there and I've probably given close to, I don't know, 500 keynotes in my life. And I've probably given the same keynote 75 or 80 times. And I will guarantee you, I've never given that same keynote this exact same way twice. Because depending on who the audience is it a large room? Is it a small room? Is it engineers? Is it CEOs? Is it CFOs? Is it, operations people? Is it salespeople? Is it marketing people? I'm going to use different analogies. I'm going to tell different stories. I'm going to get the same point across, but I'm going to do it in different ways. Some audiences, I'm going to jump off the stage and I'm going to walk through the audience. Some audiences, I'll pace the stage, and other audiences, I'll stay in one spot. You need to be able to read the room. And different people are going to do this, and you need to sit there and be cognizant. Are people leaning in? Or are they sitting back? Are their ears perked up, or their arms crossed? Are they sitting there talking to their friends and totally ignoring you? We need to be cognizant of these things, whether we're in front of 1,000 people or 6 people in a boardroom. Is everybody looking down under their desk, and they got their phones on their desk, and they're looking at different things? Are people actually even paying attention to us? And if not, is it their problem or is it yours? Because you're the one that wants to get the information across. And if they're not paying attention to you, obviously, for whatever reason, they're not seeing as what you're saying to be important or worth their time. And we need to sit there and say, have we built the level of trust? Have we built the level of respect? Have we led these people in such a way that we've earned the ability for them to listen to us? Just because we want somebody to hear something doesn't mean they're willing to listen.
I agree. Just because I have something to say doesn't mean they want to hear it, and you've got to be able to know your audience, as you said, read the room, and different people accept information in different ways. As a project manager, one of the things that we always say in project management is, if a message is delivered but not received, it's just noise. So, if I've said something and you didn't hear it, or you didn't hear what I actually said, you heard something different than what I actually said, then it's just noise, and that's not communication. The message was not communicated. And one of the things that I like to do, or one of the things that I like to help my clients with, is I have some assessments that I help my clients apply to their teams to determine what you just said about how people like to have information. Lots of people like to have information at a high level. They just want, like that old Dragnet line, just the facts, ma'am. They just want to know the facts. I myself am a detailed person. I like details. I like numbers. I like time frames. I like, draw me a graph, give me a spreadsheet. I like detail.
You're happy.
Some people, you give them that, they're like, oh my God, I can't do all this. Just tell me, what does it say? So, I'm the type of person that will read a mortgage contract, or will read a auto financing contract, or
So next time I buy a car, I should come to you and say, here,
yes,
read this for me. Tell me what
yes.
I'm
I'm
missing.
the type of person that's gonna read that thing, so, but for instance, my husband is not. My husband is just gonna say, well, how much does it cost? I just want to know how much it costs. So, but people, accept information in different ways, and therefore they process information in different ways. And so we've got to learn how to deliver that information in a way that it's accepted and it's not just noise. So yeah, I'm in total alignment with you on that, Ben. This has been a great conversation. So, if people wanted to learn more about your brand marketing and what you can do and how you can help them, how would they get in touch with you?
Everything's at yourbrandmarketing.com. Everything
Okay.
is there. Access to my podcasts, access to my thought leadership, my ebooks, free chapters of my book, links to my social media, everything, and all of the different services we have. It's all sitting there at yourbrandmarketing.com. Try to make things easy, just one place to go in, let everybody come in, and then take out what's good for you. If you want to have a conversation, I always give everybody a free 30 minutes. If if you're sitting there going, we're thinking about doing X, but we don't know where to start, I always give everybody 30 minutes for free over Zoom. So come in, take a look around. If there's something that you see that you can sit there and go, wait a second here, this could really help us, please book a Zoom call and let's have a conversation.
Okay, sounds great. And then let me just back up really quick. Tell me a little bit about your book. Tell us a little bit about your book and what we can
Yeah,
find in it.
I've written two books. One I
Okay.
wrote in 2018 called Powerful Personal Brands: A Hands-On Guide to Understanding Yours. And it really is, it's stories from my life, it's lessons learned. And at the end of every chapter, I pose a question and I leave 3 pages of blank lines for you to put your own answers in. So it works as a workbook as well. It's designed for people to understand who they are, why they do, and what they do. The second
Okay.
book we wrote over COVID, my partner and I, Claire Chandler, wrote a book called Leading Beyond a Crisis. And what this started off as a podcast, and it was designed to sit there going, okay, crises come and go. COVID's not going to be the only crisis that happens. People, when crises come, grab their knees, rock back and forth, and do nothing. And that helps no one. We need to learn how to lead through a crisis. And this book is a he said, she said ideas of different ways you can lead through a crisis and different ways you can help communicate a way so you can let not only you understand where you're going, but the people you're trying to lead understand how to go there with you.
Okay. All right. Those sound like two really great books. The first one, Powerful Personal Brands, and how we can learn ours and develop ours. And it's actually a workbook. So, yeah, that sounds really great. Like detail like that. And then, and then the second one, Leading Beyond the Crisis, which I'm sure was very useful during the COVID. Well, which we're still in COVID. A lot of people think it's over, but it's not. Still here. So that was quite a crisis that I don't think anyone was prepared for. So yeah, those sound like two really great books. So I highly encourage my audience to go and check those out. So, and definitely visit Ben at Your Brand Marketing, and maybe take advantage of that 30-minute Zoom call. I'm sure it will be very informational and helpful. So, well, thank you very much, Ben, for joining us today. Do you have any last minute little tidbits you'd like to leave our audience with?
My best tidbit is paint a picture in people's minds. Give people a vivid acknowledgement of something that means something to them. And you know that you painted a picture in their minds because you asked them to communicate it back to you. And enable them to understand, let them tell the story and empower them to tell the story. And they're not going to tell it exactly the same way you will, but it's all about getting the salient points across and getting other people excited about the journey. And the more people we get excited about the journey and the more people we can understand the direction we're going and why, the better we're all going to be as organizations.
Awesome. Sounds wonderful. I really like that. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to my audience for listening and those who are viewing us on YouTube. So, if you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to hear more on this and other topics of organizational culture, please check out the other episode of Team Building Cultures. You can find it on Apple and Spotify. Please download and like and review. Or you can also find all the episodes on YouTube at Strategic HR Consultants. That's my YouTube channel. And always feel free to visit me at customermeasures.com. That's my webpage where you can learn all about strategic HR and the services that we offer. I am Beverly Hathorn signing off, your Team Building Cultures team lead today. And thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Team Building Cultures. We hope we have delivered helpful and enlightening information to help you create your dream team. Join us next time.